I don't care about like money and material things. For me, that's not important. Some people it is. My entire journey has been freedom. I have set out on this journey to be able to say, I want to wake up every day and choose what I want to do. When you got to enjoy the journey along the way, because that's where all the lessons are learned. But then when you finally take a step back and you're like, wow, I'm there. I'm telling you guys, it's true as can be. When you're about ready to give up, just keep going, because those who keep going figure it out.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do us one teeny tiny little favor. Make sure to give yourself a follow, because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I'm bringing on this year. Without further ado, let's get right into this one. So, Mr. Finance Cowboy, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you, to get to meet you, to get to see your content on social media yet, tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do, man? What's up, dude? If they haven't seen me on social media, what are they doing? Do they live under a rock? I mean, seriously, no, I'm joking. I wish I was that big. Yeah, so I'm a normal old guy from middle of nowhere, South Carolina. Was raised as a pastor's son, and grew up in a great home. Was raised right, loving family. But we didn't have any money. Pastors, unless you just pastor of a really big church, they don't make a ton of money. So, now I'm into all this investing, and I teach people how to buy real estate. And my wife and I own a bunch of real estate, but that wasn't my upbringing. For me, it was sports big time. All the way through college. I got to play baseball through college. And that was, the real thing in my life that I attribute, outside of my family. Sports had a huge role in the success I've had today. So I went on to play sports in college, came out of college, didn't know what I wanted to do, got into the service industry at a company called Centos, where I was driving a box truck around, getting at the plant at like 4:00 in the morning, delivering uniforms, picking up dirty uniforms. It was terrible. Making like $45,000 a year, just grinding. And I was like, okay, hey, there's got to be more to life than this. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I went on a journey of, okay, how do we be different? We were 22 at the time. And, we had a lot of debt. I came out of school with over $60,000 in student loans, and had to buy me a jacked up truck and a wedding ring and all kinds of stuff. So we started behind the eight ball, like so many young folks do. But we made the decision right at the beginning of our marriage. We were very young and said, we want to be different. So we started cleaning up our finances in 2013. And by 2018, we got rid of all of our bad debt, started buying real estate. Here we are, 5 years after we started buying real estate. And it's totally changed our lives. We've reached financial and time freedom. And somewhere in the midst of that entire journey, I said, you know what? Why don't I start getting on social media and telling my story? I think it happened in July of 2021. Started with 0 followers. Was pretty much talking to myself for months and months and months. And then, finally caught a couple big breaks. The brand grew. And we're still obviously very small in comparison to a lot of folks. But it's been a blast. I get to meet a lot of people and help a lot of people. Man, that's an amazing story. And I kind of want to go back in the time machine a little bit and really ask about what was your upbringing like, being the child of a pastor, a child growing up in the church. From what I experienced, I grew up in the church as well. And for me, money wasn't always something that was talked about. And you always hear the old saying that money is the root of all evil, which is always taken out of context. But what was the topic about like wealth, like in your household growing up? Because you grew up in a church household. So what was that like growing up? Yeah, I don't remember us looking down upon it. Like, hey, it's a bad thing to be wealthy. I don't have that, memory. It just was something that wasn't in grasp from my parents. Like, it wasn't going to happen for us. So, we lived a good life. Middle class life. I got to go on vacation for a week out of the year. Everything was great. It just wasn't a conversation. And it wasn't a bad thing. Like, we didn't think people who had money were bad. It wasn't happening for us. So it wasn't a big topic. How did that play a role, do you think? Or did it play a role, do you think, later on into your life? Or what was the dynamic that caused later on? Yeah, I think you realize how money works if you decide to go on that journey. And I live in a small rural town. And I saw a lot of people who just lived the same mundane life. And it was because they didn't think that there was more out there that they could achieve. And so for me, I didn't want that. There's nothing wrong. Anybody listening to this, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not talking down to anybody who does that. I have so many friends who
They get their blue collar job out of college. They make their certain salary for the next 30 years, put a few bucks in a 401k, work from 9 to 5 every day, get their weekends off, get a week or two of vacation, and they go about their lives and they're happy. And that's fine. I just realized, okay, money is easily accessible. And I don't care about the actual money. It's what it can do for you. And if used correctly and invested correctly, it will lead you to a life of freedom. I know your audience is younger than I am. I'm 31. In my mind, I'm still young. You guys are you're in your younger 20s, so you're probably like, this guy's an old fart. But I feel like I just started on my journey at y'all's age. And just know, if you're listening to this podcast at this age, and you're young, you're in your 20s, you're ahead of the curve, because most people aren't spending time learning and taking in information on, okay, how can I change my life through whether it be real estate or just financially in general. So kudos to the listeners.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's one of those things where I kind of came to the same realization. For me, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was my epiphany. And from there, I was like, all right, they got something in here that's not being taught up or brought up in school or my environment, but more importantly, in my household at all. And so for me, it was kind of just like sheer curiosity. It's like, all right, what is this guy in this book talking about? Is there more of this information out there? And that's when I kind of stumbled into, a bunch of podcasts. And one of my favorite books is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. That book really got me started into personal finance and like points and miles on credit cards. And then Richest Man in Babylon, which is another big one that I read. And that was like all in like the beginning of my journey. And so for me, it was during like my sophomore break between winter, fall and spring semester where I was learning all that stuff. And for me, the decision to get into this entrepreneurship world, it kind of became a no-brainer because it was the middle of the pandemic. So my reasons for going to college were wiped out because I didn't have a quote-unquote college experience anymore. It was just all taken away. And then I started learning about all this stuff that wasn't being brought up in school. And I was like, all right, man, I got to get to the bottom of this. There's more out there. And for me, it's like, with the whole world being paused, it's like, I might as well go find it out and figure out if there actually is more out there. And from what I've found, there's a lot more out there to be had. And so let me ask you, because later on in your journey, you ended up getting into real estate. So for me, it was because I told you before we hit record, I bought a $500 wholesaling course. And that's what kind of taught me about real estate a little bit and what got me interested in it. What was that for you? What was that epiphany that made you realize, all right, real estate's going to be the vehicle that I choose out of all the million other ways to make money out there?
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy. And so I said, okay, what is an asset that's been making people ridiculously wealthy for a very long time? And when you look at real estate, that's what it's done. It's not a speculative asset. For centuries and centuries and centuries, it's been making people rich. So if you buy real estate the right way and you hold it over time, you pretty much have no other option but to get wealthy. And I said, well, that sounds like a good plan. And then you have to cross the bridge of, oh, well, that's complex. Is that too hard for me to do? And then I'm just dumb enough to say, well, all these other people have done it. If they can do it, I can do it. And so I think it started there. And then I had people in my life who got into real estate where I did, and seeing the impact. My best friend, his name's Gaston. He started, getting into the real estate game right out of college and then started buying rental properties a few years after that. By the time he was 27 or 28, he's a multimillionaire because he owned rental properties. And that was before I had started investing. And so seeing the impact it had on his life at that point, knowing what history had shown, and then seeing in the present what it was doing for my best buddy, I said, hey, I got to get in. I got to get into this ASAP.
Yeah. And then, so you started seeing that, and then eventually you got into it, right? And then finance cowboy. So what was the origin story of that? Like, what made you the finance cowboy? Did you just genuinely like cowboy hats, or do you happen to be wearing one time and got the nickname and just turned that into a whole thing?
Yeah, but actually when I started the brand, it was the Million by 30 coach when I first created an Instagram account. And then I started thinking, that kind of boxes me out of being able to help people who are already over 30, So while it is good to niche, I think I'd niched down a little too far. And so I was thinking, okay, what can I change the name of this brand to? And my wife and I were going on a date one night. I'd been thinking about it for a week or two, and I was putting cowboy boots on, to go out on our date. And I was like, finance cowboy, because at the time when I started the brand, I was still spending a lot of time not only talking about real estate, but also personal finances. And if you follow me, at Finance Cowboy, you'll see that I still talk about personal finances, because anytime you're talking about investing, personal finances have to go hand in hand, because we got to have a strong personal financial foundation to be able to invest. But as I've progressed, the brand is pretty heavy on, residential real estate investing now. But yeah, that's where the name came from, man. We live on land. My wife grew up on 200 plus acres with cattle and horses, and we got chickens. And for me, I was like, you know what? That's catchy. That's catchy. And not many people are wearing a cowboy hat when you scroll through Instagram. So hopefully I'll make some people stop.
Yeah, and it's definitely a good marketing play. I had something similar. So when I started, my company, Stop and Stare Media, how that came about is, so before I cut my hair, I had like maybe quadruple the amount of hair I have now. Like my hair was like, I had a full head of curly hair. You could not miss me. And so I was asked to teach a marketing class on social media back in January of last year. And I was in this real estate group. It was a free group. And they just figured, because I was like a third of the age of most people in there, that I had to be some social media genius. And they were like, hey, John, can you teach a class? And I was like, no, I never taught a class before. And they were like, John, let us know when you want it scheduled. And then from there, I ended up deciding to schedule a date. And so I'm licensed with Keller Williams. And they had their first family reunion in a long time in 2022, because the other ones got canceled because of the pandemic. So I was like, all right, I'm going to teach this the Friday before, because I knew I was going there. And then when I go there, they were having a networking event for all the people in the group. I was like, all right, I'm going to go there. And I got a free shirt. Oh, no, it was $20 on custom ink that said "Stop and Stare, just don't touch the hair." Partially because it's a big pet peeve of mine, but like also partially because I knew it would get people to pay attention to me. And so I taught the course, the free class. Then the next week, I went to family reunion with my hair out and I wore that shirt. And then 8 months later, I ended up trying to turn into something, but that's where the name originated from, which is because everyone kind of knew me by my hair. And it's something that I already had. So it's like, why make it harder for myself to brand myself than it has to be when I got something already that people like? So I love your story, man. And now kind of to segue into the main topic of today's conversation. Now that we've got the backstory, we know a little bit more about who the Finance Cowboy is. So real estate investing, man, a lot of people talk about real estate investing. There's tons of people from Bigger Pockets, right? There's tons of people who have their own real estate investing courses and stuff like that. How did you find your niche and teaching it? Like, what was your unique strategy or your unique way of teaching it? Because a lot of people tend to overcomplicate it. And most of my audience don't know what any of that cash on cash return stuff or all that stuff means. It's like, break it down for us. Residential real estate, why that versus all the other vehicles? Let's start there.
I think you have to choose which direction you want to go in anything. You can, whether it's real estate, business, whatever, there's so many different options. And so you have to decide, okay, which one am I going to do? Then you got to put blinders on and you got to go do it. And so for me, that was residential real estate. And there's a number of reasons why, I started with that is, it appeals to the masses. I think any good business person looks and say, okay, how can I own a product that appeals to as many people as possible? Right? You can buy it and sell it to investors. You can sell it to the general public. Think about what's the American dream. The American dream is to own your own home. Well, as an investor, if I can own homes and then I need to offload it, I got a whole plethora, 350 million people in the United States that I can sell these properties to. Then they're easy to buy because they're so, they're everywhere. Banks are used to lending to single family homes. And then they, when we get better tenants, I mean, think about the people who want to live in a house compared to an apartment. Not morally better people, but just a lot of time people who rent a home out are trying to plant roots somewhere and treat it as a home. And so for me, it started with just, okay, I had to choose a vehicle. And then as the brand grew and my experience grew, and I've done tens of transactions just over and over, just tons of transactions over the years, I said, okay, I know what the roadblocks are. I know what people are thinking. I know what's holding them back. I know what is confusing to them because I've just been through it in this particular asset of residential real estate. And so how can I put something together that is going to be able to break down the barriers, quote unquote, that are in their minds and give them solutions to their pain points? And that's essentially, what we've done in our program called the Rental Academy is we bring people in and we simplify it, break it down, teach them exactly how to go out and buy it, depending on which strategy is best for them, because there's a lot of different ways that you can buy this one asset. And so it's subjective per person. And, we work with the folks and help them accomplish their goals.
Yeah, that's amazing. I kind of want to ask you too, because with real estate, I'm sure you've had tons of opportunities to invest in other deals, especially as your brand started to grow and people started to get more awareness as to who you are. But how do you kind of keep the blinders on and stay focused on your vehicle that you chose? Because with real estate, there's so many things to hear. And then you listen to all these different podcasts and it's like, oh, this one guy is doing SCRs, guy is doing SCR arbitrage, one guy is doing long-term rentals, one guy is doing XYZ. And it's like, it never ends. So once you get started in a vehicle, then what did you do to make sure that you stay focused? For all the people, I think it's a lot easier. You're still relatively super young compared to most people that have invested in real estate, but it's like, as you know, it's very easy to get shiny object syndrome and just be a little squirrel when you start getting into the space. Because on top of the real estate investing, then there's always, in most states, it's pretty easy to get a real estate license. And it's like, oh, should I get my license? And I want to be an investor because then I get access to the properties on the market and stuff like that. So how did you stay focused on the vehicle that you had chosen?
Yeah, you realize as you go through life, you chase the shiny object syndrome ordeal. Like you just, most of us do it. And then you realize that it ends up just making you spin your tires. And so for me, as I've gotten older, I've realized, okay, like I know what happens when I lose focus. When I lose focus, I move backwards. When I stay focused, I move forwards. And could I potentially miss out on other opportunities over here because I'm so focused? Yeah, but I'm also still going to capitalize on the ones that I set out to capitalize on and ultimately reach my goals. And, there's, not to get into the weeds of real estate, but there's lots of things that you can do with a property. There's 5 core principles that you got to know if you're going to be successful in real estate investing. You got to be able to choose a market. You got to generate leads in those markets. You got to be able to analyze leads in those markets. Once you've analyzed them, you got to be able to fund those deals. And then you got to be able to manage those properties, whether you're managing rehab or whether you're managing tenants. And so if you can figure out how to do those 5 things, which I spend a lot of time teaching our students on, then you can go out and you can do long-term rentals. You could do short-term rentals. You can do fix and flips, all within the residential space. But because we know those 5 pillars, it's given us the knowledge and the empowerment to be able to go find those good deals and then choose what we want to do with them based on what our goals are.
Yeah. So the 5, repeat them again for me. So you said, man, you got to find the deals, right? You have to analyze the deals. And once you analyze them, you have to remind me you manage them. What was the other 2? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. So choose a market, generate leads or find deals, analyze those deals, fund those deals, and then manage the properties or the rehabs.
Okay, so that's
with the property.
The one I wanted to focus on primarily, and I think the one that's probably most beneficial to the young crowd or people who are less experienced in real estate, is the one about generating leads or finding deals, because that skill, regardless of wherever you go, will be extremely valuable to anyone, whether you decide to invest for yourself or decide to help someone else invest. So it's like, how do you get the knack for it? How do you get the eye for figuring out what's good and what's not? Because a lot of people, they'll draw up some numbers and it'll look good on paper and it never plays out that way how they originally drew it up. So how did you kind of get the knack for generating deals pretty much almost on repeat?
Yeah, dude, I could spend days teaching on this. So I'll try not to get too far lost here, but it starts with choosing a market. And then within that market, we've got to choose particular areas. And then once we choose those particular areas, we just start farming. It's just like farming. We've got our ground now. Now it's time to pull these properties up. And there are a number of ways that you can go about it. Depends if you're going low budget or depends if you're going high budget and you're wanting to bring in a bunch of deals. The majority of the deals I've bought, I've never paid a dime in leads for. So I'll buy them. I'll find them on Zillow. A realtor will bring them to me off market. Wholesalers will bring them to me off market. Property management companies will bring them to me. Other investors will call me. So that's how I've generated the majority of my leads. Then you can get into the whole paid lead, type of situation where you're doing cold calling and you're doing mail outs and you're running radio ads, which I think lends itself more if you're setting up a wholesale business. I don't think if you're trying to build a rental portfolio, you necessarily need to do that type of marketing. But then, knowing once we generate that lead, like, should we buy it or should we not? I kind of work backwards. I look and say, okay, what is the after repair value in this area for this type of home? What are the comps that recently sold? And then how do I go find a deal that's undervalued based on that? So in the simplest form, without going way in the weeds, it's buying, the worst house in that best neighborhood. And we're not going to go buy real estate in the best neighborhoods, but, in those B to C class neighborhoods, which just mean not the best neighborhoods in town, not the worst neighborhoods in town. So how do we find the worst houses in those B to C areas, make them pretty, get them rented out, hold them over time, and then decide what we want to do with them down the road, whether we sell them, 1031 exchange, cash out, refi, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and then once you got to go to those 5 skills, you started using those to invest in your properties. Now, to kind of move on a little bit, once you started investing in properties, at what point did you realize, like, all right, I could not do any more and I'll be good. Like, I'll be well off for at least a good amount of time. At what point did you realize that? What was it like when you realized it?
Yeah, I started buying in 2018, and I would say by probably 2020, maybe the beginning of 2021, I realized, all right, if I never bought another property again, I've changed my family tree, not in a sense of private jets, Beverly Hills mansions, but in the sense of freedom, doing what we want to do. Kids go to school where I want them to go to school. Me and my wife doing what we want to do. It's a pretty good feeling, man. I mentioned this earlier. I don't care about like money and material things. That for me, that's not important. Some people it is. That's their prerogative. But my entire journey has been freedom. I have set out on this journey to be able to say, I want to wake up every day and choose what I want to do. And when you actually get to that point, it's pretty powerful. And you got to enjoy the journey along the way because that's where all the lessons are learned. But then when you finally take a step back and you're like, wow, I'm there, it's pretty amazing.
So I think a lot about this and how I would feel. And they say like one of the most important days is like the day after success. And that's where you realize if someone will really make it or not, because most people get that first taste and they take their foot off the gas. When you get there to that point where, like, as I said, you could take your foot off the gas reasonably and still be okay. Now, what does the game become like then? Because as you said, you're not doing it for money. You have enough to, be well off with your family and do what you want to do. But it's like, what does the game become like? What's your purpose for playing once you get to that point? How does the game change?
Yeah, I think it's just, I feel like a lot of people, or probably everybody who's had success, is a driven person. And so when you reach, quote unquote, where you want to go, there's only so much satisfaction. It's like you ask the guy, how much money is enough money? He says, when I get just a little bit more, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, and whether it's money or whatever, for me, it's just drive. So I've got the real estate thing down. I've had a successful career in the corporate world. Well, now I'm on my new challenge of building this brand, and more importantly, business. We got full-time employees that work at Finance Cowboy. I've never done this before. Mm-hmm. And, there's some days I wake up and I'm like, why don't I just delete the account, fire everybody, and just go play golf?
Yeah.
But then the majority of the time I'm like, no, that'd be too boring. This is fun. I enjoy it. I get to help a lot of people and build a team. And so for me, it's the new challenge. It's, hey, what's next? And, maybe you reach a time in your life, and I think I will, like, as my kids progress and get older, where a lot of my time will go into whatever they're doing, sports, whatever. Like, I don't miss anything now. I take them to school. I take them to practice. I'm at every game. I coach. But like really, training with them if they're an athlete or if they're a musician or whatever. And so I'll probably pull back the reins of my involvement in different ventures as I age. But you got to keep moving forward one way or the other.
Yeah, 100%. And are you familiar with the, I think there's a Netflix documentary. I think it's called like the Weight of Gold. Have you heard about it or seen it?
No, I've heard about it. Somebody told me I got to watch it. I haven't. I don't do a good job watching shows, so I got to.
Me either, but I got the general summary of it. So I didn't watch it either, but I got the summary from someone else because I'm not the best for shows either. But pretty much in the Weight of Gold, it pretty much talks about most people actually aren't scared to fail. They're scared to succeed because of the responsibility that comes from it. They're scared to grow because, as you said, now you got employees. So now it's not just your life. If you did decide to delete the account and go play golf, well, I mean, of course you'll be straight, but what about the people who relied on that job? And there's a lot, and not just with owning a business, but just with most things in life. Because once you start winning, you're held to a different standard, and now you have to keep that up. And like you can feel as if you never get a chance to backtrack or slip up. Because like, oh, well, I succeeded now, and now this is my minimum threshold now. At the very worst, I could have to do at least up here, and that threshold just keeps on raising as you keep on succeeding and winning. And so you feel like you're always getting chased by a shark almost eventually. And the shark just happens to be yourself and your own thoughts. But have you felt anything like that where it's like you started winning and you started to realize, all right, I got a lot more weight that I have to bear that I didn't really intended to sign up for originally? Like, did you ever come across that point or no?
Fantastic question. I have experienced it more with this brand than I have in anything in life. You know, there's a point where you feel that with your family. You know, I got a wife and 4 kids, and so that's the first hurdle you go through is, you know, these are the people that are relying on me. So I know they're not employees, but I got to provide. And then, you know, then it moves on to employees, and you overcome the family thing. You realize, hey, everybody's going to be okay. We've got a good thing going. We've reached the financial freedom, all that good stuff. I got one of my buddies here right now joining us on the podcast, speaking to kids. But then, you know, I think as you're building a business, because it's the first time I've built a business, you really start to feel that. And if you're not careful, you'll never get out of that cycle. You'll always feel like you're being chased. And I think that's where it's important to have systems and build out systems and put people in place who can run that business for you. So I'm the visionary. So what I need, my next step in my business and my journey is the integrator.
Yeah.
And that's what will allow me to just be free to do the things that I enjoy, knowing that the business and day-to-day stuffs get ran how it should.
100%. And by any chance, have you read the book, The E-Myth Revisited?
So I read it probably 2 years ago, and I'm in the middle of it right now as a refresher. So funny you say that. I have it pulled up on my Kindle right now.
I read it for the first time about a week and a half ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this entrepreneur thing as an employee for pretty much forever. I mean, I'm pretty new into entrepreneurship in the grand scheme of things. I've only been doing this about like a year and a half now. But it's like, for me, I didn't even realize what I was doing until I read that book. And I was recommended by someone else. And I was like, this big book makes so much sense. And so let me ask you, because most people, especially young people, a lot of the times they just don't want to work for someone else. So it's not even because they want to start up a business. They just don't want to clock in for someone else. They don't want someone else to tell them what they have to do. And they don't want a boss they have to answer to. So it's like, screw that, F you. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to figure it out and start my own business. Right? Because it's so easy to. Like, there's literally almost no barrier to entry. And so it's like, what stops a lot of people? And a lot of people in real estate investing too, it's a business. A lot of people don't treat it as such. But like, and just business in general, what do you think stops most people from starting to get some traction going? And how can they overcome that employee mindset that a lot of us enter into? Because a lot of us that are newer and younger get into this entrepreneurship game. We don't have entrepreneur experience.
Yeah, it's I think it's tough to work through, because you hear people talk about working on your business, not in your business. But everybody who says work on your business, not in your business, worked in their business for a very long time to be able to work on their business. And so I call bullcrap when they talk. I think that is where you need to go. But if you are at that place where you just have become an employee to yourself and it's like not fun anymore, you just aren't working for somebody else, but you're still just as busy or more busy, there's probably 2 things. Number one, you haven't generated enough income to be able to bring in an integrator. Or number 2, you have, and you're just too stubborn to bring in an integrator, and you're going to make your life miserable. And so I want to encourage you, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you're spot on, because for me, it's like I think it's maybe because I'm young and I'm energetic. I think I could do everything, and it's just going to work out because I'm young and I have energy. So, and it's like, last year, I was put on my face so many times my life because I thought I could do, because I have the podcasting and I was teaching the social media classes. And like my podcast isn't for realtors, it's for like young people. So it's entirely different target audiences. And on top of that, I also have my license as an agent. So I was trying to do that as well. I was like, man, old folks got nothing on me, man. I'm hardworking, I'm ambitious, I got drive. It's all gonna come together. It was like, man, that's not how it played out at all.
No, I feel you 100%. It's hard. It's very hard. And there's things you can do. If you don't have money to bring on somebody and pay them, you can bring on that, partner as an equity person, but then you got to make sure it's the right person because then you're married to that person forever. Starting a business is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. And it sounds very simple. It's not always simple. Is you got to generate income. Whatever you do, you have to generate, and nothing else matters other than selling at the beginning. You got to be able to deliver on your product, obviously, but you have to be able to create that income and profit, not just revenue. We got to have profit that then allows us to put the people in place to allow the business to scale, and it's hard to get there. And my biggest advice, and it's so cliche, and I didn't believe it. I promise you I didn't believe it at y'all's age. I didn't believe it till recently, but I'm telling you guys, it's true as can be. When you're about ready to give up, just keep going, because those who keep going figure it out. Most people give up, but it's going to get really hard at some point. It's going to get really hard. But if you'll keep going, keep pivoting, keep innovating until something clicks. Do you know how many side gigs I've done before Finance Cowboy happened? I mean, I've had a pressure washing business, delivered fruit. I've taken pictures for Google, like in-cap pictures. And so I've done so much stuff. I've done, events at our church that grew, and none of it stuck, but it all led me to the brand I'm building today that has stuck. It's here to stay. It may not happen right away. Some people it does, but most of the time it's a journey. But you got to take all the nuggets that you learn along the journey, and then just know if you stay at it, then one day it's all going to click and your life will change.
Let me ask you, man, do you have a Bible verse that helps you get through tough time, or a favorite quote or something? Like, what's your fallback? What's your, the thing that you could lean on when everything just hits the fan and you feel like nothing is going your way, no matter how much you work on? Like, what's the thing that keeps you going?
I'm not a big quote guy. I obviously read the Bible. I'm just, quotes don't motivate me. Motivational speakers don't motivate me. I hate it. So, I think it's sorry, I can't answer the question in a good way. Here's a quote for you that I do enjoy, and then I'll tell you what really motivates me. You can either pay now or play later. You can play now or pay later. The earlier you figure that out in life, the more successful you'll be. You got to choose which one you're going to do. So that's a quote that stuck with me. But I attribute my resiliency, my resolve to the sport that I played through college, baseball. You are playing a sport where if you get a hit 3 out of 10 times in the major leagues, you're a Hall of Famer. So that means you're failing 7 out of 10 times if you're one of the best players. And so I spent my entire childhood, teen years, and young adulthood playing a sport every day that beat me into the ground. You're walking away and you just failed miserably every day. So I learned to fail. And so now in the business world and life and real estate and anything I do, I am legitimately numb to fail. I've lost sums of money off of failed attempts that if I said them, people would be like, oh my God, how are you still survive? How could you do that? But I don't harp on it. I just move on. It's done. The game's over. The game's done. We got another game tomorrow. And I go back to how that was instilled in me. I understand everybody doesn't have that experience. And so they all can't relate, but that's what's pushed me through the tough times.
Yeah. I played baseball. That was my first official sport. Like fifth and sixth grade, I played. 7th grade a little bit. And I sucked. Couldn't hit to save my life, but I could sure play shortstop, man. I was official at shortstop back in the day. And then I moved into football and basketball. With football, I ended up giving up basketball. I had a bad high school coach, and he made me hate the sport, which I shouldn't have let him do, but I was young at that time. And I was like, screw this, screw basketball. And football was right there calling my name. So I was just like, man, I'll see where this goes. But it's the same thing. Like with football, you practice 5 days a week just to play one, right? It's like every day. And then you have all spring football, all summer, conditioning, and then all, pretty much a training camp to get ready to play that very first game. It's just like you rarely ever actually get to play. It's just constant, almost torture pretty much, especially in the summer, man. Them practices in the summer, them 7 a.m. workouts at 90-degree weather were not fun at all. But it's like, man, if I could go back and play it all back, man, in a heartbeat, I would go back and just to relive it all, man. Not to change anything, but definitely, I think sports is something that helped me make me who I am and molded me into who I am. I definitely wouldn't have done anywhere near close to as much without having all this stuff that football drilled into me and all the coaches drilled into me. So I love that, man. So, man, we had a great conversation so far. We talked about real estate investing. We talked about life a little bit. We talked about, just pushing through it, entrepreneurship. Where can we find you at? I know it's super simple. So where can we find you at? If we want to learn more about what you have going on and just enter your world to keep up with you and what you're doing.
Yep. If you're on Instagram, at Finance Cowboy. If you're on YouTube, Finance Cowboy. Twitter, Finance Cowboy. TikTok, at The Finance Cowboy. If you want to learn how to buy real estate, cowboysacademy.com/learn the game. And, I would love to have you in the family and, following the brand and help out however I can. That's all we exist, man. We exist to teach people how to gain financial and time freedom.
Yes, sir. And so now it's time for our famous 5 questions. And I'm really excited to hear what you got to say. So the question number 1 is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Oh, boy. Most impactful lesson that I have ever learned in life would be treat family like gold. And I understand that we all don't have maybe biological family that you're close with, but maybe you have, adopted family or really close friends who are family. The real ones in your life, I guess if that's a cool term that the younger folks use, whatever it is. Like those people who are real in your life, treat them like gold. The older you get, there's not many of them. And you need those people in your life.
100%. There's a quote I love. It's the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So for all of you folks that don't have biological family that you can call that, I always love that quote. Second question, what is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Honesty. I mean, if you're not honest, you're worth nothing. I mean, I know that's kind of harsh, but you're not worth being around. So you got to be honest.
What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
The legacy I'm trying to leave behind is one that loves people, loves his family, enjoyed life, and, helped a lot of people achieve their goals. If I can accomplish those things, I'll feel good heading 6 feet under.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
Oh, man, that's too hard. It depends on what area we're trying to change their life. But I would say outside of the Bible, Richest Man in Babylon, to me, is one of the just most fantastic books I've ever read. And that's a financial, theme. So if you wanted to talk about something else, we could. But financial theme, Richest Man in Babylon probably had the largest impact on me, more than Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was young.
Yeah, that's amazing. You might have to get a good reading level to read that book, man. The old English is annoying to get through, but if you can get through it, man, it's definitely a great read.
Yeah.
And then the final question, man, for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step that you recommend they take?
First thing you should do is create a budget. A budget is the heartbeat of personal finances, and you can't embark on wealth if you don't even know where your money's going. So get a budget together. And, from there, find a way to decrease your expenses, get out of debt, increase your income. Once you're out of debt, have that emergency fund build up. Once that emergency fund's built up, it's time to invest everything else. And if you do that, you'll grow wealth, and you'll do it faster than 95% of people.
Amazing. Well, as I said, I'm glad we were able to get on. It's been a long time coming, man. I'm so glad that you agreed to hop on the podcast, and I'm glad that our conversation was super well versed in a bunch of different topics. So a lot of nuggets to take out of this one. So thanks again for hopping on.
Yeah, bro. Appreciate you having me. It was a pleasure.